Ghost, 13 Haunting Tales to Tell. It was in the mess hall that the boys first heard about Camp Champlain's groundskeeper, Old Man Blackwood. Blackwood lived in a one-room cabin at the southern edge of the camp property, in the marshlands near the abandoned highway. The rumor was that Blackwood knew all the best ghost stories, the ones that were too scary or too gruesome for the counselors to tell the young campers around the campfire. Thomas was too scared to try to find Blackwood's cabin alone in the dark. But when his bunkmate Skeeter announced he was going to make the long walk across the marsh that night, Thomas said, "I'll come too." But the words had no sooner left his lips than Thomas found himself consumed with dread. After that evening's last bunk check, Thomas and Skeeter snuck out of their beds, walked the camp's gravel road to the derelict highway, then hopped a split-rail fence into the pathless marsh, on the other side of which sat Blackwood's cabin. Trudging through the marsh, the boys felt their shoes sink into the mud, deeper and deeper as they swatted away the waist-high grass, which seemed to grow higher with every step. The ground beneath them was soft, so soft that if you stood still for too long, you'd sink right into it. Thomas looked around and realized that he couldn't tell which way they'd come from. "What if we get caught?" whispered Thomas nervously. "Oh, we're not going to get caught," said Skeeter. "And you don't have to whisper. Go on and scream if you want. Nobody can hear you." Thomas gulped. The fact that no one could hear them made the boy even more nervous. The boys walked for what seemed like hours. Tired and muddy, Thomas became certain that they would never find their way out of the marsh. But just as it seemed he could not take another step, Skeeter pointed through the trees, exclaiming, "Look!" The full moon illuminated Old Man Blackwood's cabin, a decrepit, crumbling structure. The wooden planks were dried and cracking. The tin roof was rusted with holes. The foundation was sinking into the swampy earth below, so much so that the cabin tilted slightly on the right side. Though Thomas had never laid eyes on it before, there was something very familiar about the rickety old house. Skeeter rapped his knuckles against the cabin's door. The boys waited, but there was no response, and they heard no one stirring inside. "Too bad," said Thomas. "He's not home. I guess we should head back to camp, huh?" But just as he said it, the door swung open. Standing in the doorway was an old man with long, thin gray hair, a splotchy, bristly beard, and, hanging from his right elbow, a flesh-colored prosthetic arm and hook. Thomas held his breath as Old Man Blackwood stared down at him, both eyes clouded over with cataracts. After what felt like an eternity, the man said with a sneer, "You've come for the stories." Thomas somehow managed to nod. Old Man Blackwood snorted and then walked back into the cabin, leaving the door open behind him. Thomas turned to Skeeter, seeing for the first time that his friend was now as scared as he. But before Thomas could suggest that they both run, Blackwood snapped at them. "Hurry up, and don't forget to shut the door behind you. You're letting in a draft." The interior of the cabin was dimly lit by a single hanging gas lantern. The walls were covered with the dried skins of squirrels and rabbits. Deer antlers hung from the ceiling, suspended by thin strands of animal sinew. The room smelled sour with the rotting flesh of dead things. The chair creaked loudly as Old Man Blackwood lowered himself into it, taking a seat at a small table in the center of the cabin. He picked up a tin cup and spit tobacco juice into it. Thomas watched, disgusted, as Blackwood wiped brown saliva from his lips with the sleeve of his own flannel shirt. The grizzled groundskeeper nodded to two open seats at the table. Thomas started to move toward a chair, before noticing that Skeeter had remained motionless, too paralyzed by fright to do anything. Thomas grabbed him by the arm and pulled him into a seat. There are only 13 true ghost stories in this world. Blackwood shifted, leaning forward in his chair, the candlelight reflected in his smoky eyes. Tonight, I'm going to tell you them all.